Hello kids, a very interesting story today. कई बार ऐसा होता है कि हम अपने आसपास बहुत चीज़ें देखते हैं मगर उन्हें ऑब्जर्व नहीं करते, अंडरस्टैंड नहीं करते और अपनी लाइफ में बिजी रहते हैं। लेकिन बड़ी बार जैसा कि इस स्टोरी में मरने के बाद बहुत सारी चीज़ें इस प्रिंस ने नोटिस करी और उनको चेंज करने की भी कोशिश करी। लाइफ में ऐसा नहीं होता कि मरने के बाद हम कुछ चेंज कर सकें, लेकिन ये स्टोरी पढ़ने के बाद अपनी लाइफ में बड़ी सारी चीज़ें हम चेंज कर सकते हैं। सो लेट अस रीड द स्टोरी द हैप्पी प्रिंस। The statue of the happy prince stood high above the city where it could be seen by all the citizens. It was covered all over with the finest gold. For the eyes there were two splendid sapphires, and there was a large red ruby in the handle of its sword. It was very much admired by everyone. पूरी स्टैचू गोल्ड से कवर्ड थी। जहाँ पे आईज होती हैं वहाँ पे ब्लू कलर के सैफायर्स लगे हुए थे, ब्यूटीफुल ब्लू जेम्स। और जो स्वॉर्ड थी हाथ में उसमें भी एक ब्यूटीफुल सा रेड कलर का जेम रूबी लगा हुआ था। Why can't you be happy like the happy prince? Mothers said to their children when they cried. The happy prince never cries about anything. One night, a little swallow flew over the city. His friends had already flown to Egypt to spend the winter there, but he had remained behind. हमें मालूम है ना कि कुछ माइग्रेटरी बर्ड्स होते हैं जो विंटर टाइम में दूर कहीं उस लैंड में जाते हैं जहां गर्मी होती है। वैसा ही एक बर्ड स्वॉलो उस रात उस सिटी के ऊपर से जा रहा था। I hope I can find somewhere to sleep, he said to himself. Then he saw the statue. That's just the place for me, he decided. A fine position with plenty of fresh air and a very good view. He flew down to rest just between the feet of the happy prince. I have a golden bedroom, he thought as he prepared to go to sleep. But then, just as he was putting his head under his wing, a large drop of water fell on him. He looked up. It is very strange, he said. There is not a single cloud in the sky, and the stars are shining bright, but it is raining. Then another drop fell on him. What is the use of a statue if it cannot keep the rain off? He said. Well, I shall have to look for somewhere else to sleep. But before he had opened his wings, a third drop fell. He looked up again and saw, what did he see? The eyes of the happy prince were filled with tears, and tears were streaming down his golden face. He looked so sorrowful in the light of the moon that the little swallow felt grieved for him. थोड़ा कॉन्ट्रास्ट लग रहा है ना? हैप्पी प्रिंस, उसका स्टैचू रो रहा है। Who are you? He asked. I am the happy prince. Then why are you crying? You have made me quite wet with your tears. When I was alive and had a human heart, the prince explained, I did not know what tears were. I never cried because I lived in a palace where sadness was never allowed to enter. In the daytime, I played with my friends in the garden, and in the evening, I danced in the palace halls. There was a very high wall round the garden, but I never wondered what lay on the other side because everything on my side of it was so beautiful. Everyone called me the happy prince, and indeed I was happy, if pleasure is the same as happiness. मतलब ज़रूरी नहीं कि जो चीज़ों से हमें कुछ मज़ा मिल रहा है वही हैप्पीनेस है, ज़रूरी नहीं। एंड प्रिंस का क्या कहना था कि जब तक वो जीवित था उसको अपने पैलेस के बाहर क्या हो रहा है वो पता ही नहीं था और उसकी लाइफ में सिर्फ खुशियाँ और मज़ा था. I was so pleased with my little world. Well, so I lived and so I died. And now that I am dead, they have set me up here so high that I can see all the ugliness and unhappiness of my city. And though my heart is made of lead, yet I cannot help but weep. अब मेरी स्टैचू यहाँ जितनी ऊंचाई पर लगाई है, अब मुझे सबका दुख, अनहैप्पीनेस और अगलीनेस नज़र आता है. हालांकि अब मेरा हार्ट एक मेटल का बना है, बट आई कैनॉट हेल्प बट वीप. नेक्स्ट डे इन द मॉर्निंग, when the swallow was getting ready to fly away, he bid goodbye to the happy prince. Far away, said the happy prince in a soft, sweet voice. Far away from here, there is a poor house in a little street. One of the windows is open, and through it I can see a woman seated at a table. Her face is thin and weary, and her hands are red and tired. She is a needlewoman, and she is sewing flowers on a silk dress for a noble lady to wear at a dance in the palace. Her little boy is lying ill in a corner of the tiny room. He keeps on asking for oranges, but his poor mother has nothing to give him but river water, and so he cannot stop crying. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, will you not take her the ruby out of my sword? My feet are fixed here, and I cannot move. My friends are waiting for me in Egypt, said the swallow. I must go to them now. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, will you not stay with me just for one night and be my messenger? The boy is so thirsty and his mother is so sad. I don't like boys, answered the swallow. Last summer, when I was flying over the river, some boys kept on throwing stones at me. But the happy prince looked so sad that the little swallow felt very sorry for him. It is very cold here, he said, but I will stay with you for one night and be your messenger. Thank you, little swallow, said the prince. And so the swallow pecked the great ruby out of the prince's sword and flew away to the poor little house and looked in. The boy was lying restlessly on his bed, and his mother had fallen asleep in her great weariness. He flew in and dropped the great ruby on the table beside the woman's hand. Then he flew round and round the bed, cooling the boy's head with his wings. How cool I feel now, said the boy. I think I am getting better. And he fell sound asleep. The swallow flew back to the happy prince and told him what he had done. I don't know why it is, he said, but I feel quite warm now, although it is really very cold. That is because you have helped someone, said the prince. The little swallow soon fell asleep. उसने एक अच्छा काम किया था ना. एक तो हैप्पी प्रिंस के कहने पे वो रुक गया ताकि वो उस लिटिल बॉय और उसकी मदर की मदद कर सके, और इतना अच्छा काम करके वो जो उसको दिल में गर्मी महसूस हो रही थी, शायद यही वो गर्मी थी जिससे कि वो बाहर की ठंड झेल पा रहा था. I shall fly to Egypt tonight, the swallow decided the next day. When the moon rose, he flew back to the happy prince. Have you any message that you would like me to carry to Egypt for you? He asked. I am just setting out. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, said the prince. Will you not stay with me for one more night? My friends are waiting for me in Egypt, replied the swallow. The sun is shining there and the air is warm. I have to go. अब यहाँ पे इतनी ठंड थी और सारे फ्रेंड्स इसके ऑलरेडी इजिप्ट में थे. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, said the prince. Far away across the city, I can see a young man in a cold attic. He is sitting at a table covered with papers, and in a glass at his side there is a bunch of dead flowers. His hair is brown and he has large, dreamy eyes. He is trying to finish a play for the theatre, but he is too cold to go on writing. There is no fire in his tiny room and he is weak with hunger. "I will stay with you for one more night," said the swallow, who was very kind-hearted. "Have you another ruby for me to take to the young poet?" "I have no other ruby," said the prince. "My eyes are all that I have left. They are made of beautiful sapphires which were brought from India 1,000 years ago. Pick one of them out and take it to him. He can sell it to a jeweler. Then he will be able to keep his fire going and to buy food to eat. He will be able to finish his play and make his dream of fame come true." "Dear prince," said the swallow sadly, "I cannot peck your eye out. Don't ask me to do that." And he began to weep. "Swallow, swallow, little swallow," said the prince, "do as I command you." The little swallow pecked out the prince's eye and flew away with it to the young man's attic. It was easy enough to get in because the roof was full of holes. The young poet, who was sitting with his head buried in his hands, did not hear the bird's wings. When he looked up, he found the beautiful sapphire lying on the dead flowers. "This must have come from a great admirer of my work," he cried. "I am beginning to be famous." And he set to work on finishing his play, feeling very hopeful and happy. कभी कभी जब सिचुएशंस बहुत डिफ़िकल्ट होती हैं तो एक छोटी सी होप हमें वो मजबूती देती है कि हम आगे बढ़ते रहें. तो वो सफ़ायर देख के इस पोएट को वही होप मिली. On the third day, when the moon rose, the swallow flew back to the happy prince. "I have come to say goodbye," he said. "Swallow, swallow, little swallow," said the prince, "will you not stay one more night with me?" "It is winter," replied the swallow sadly, "and soon it will be snowing. In Egypt, the hot sun is shining on the green palm trees. My friends are waiting for me. Dear prince, I must leave you, but I shall never forget you. And when I return in the spring, I shall bring you 2 very precious jewels in place of those which you have given away." "There is a little girl standing in the square below us," said the prince. "She is selling boxes of matches. That is how she earns her living. She has just dropped them all in a puddle of dirty water, and they are spoiled. Her father will beat her cruelly if she does not bring any money home, and she is weeping bitterly. She has no shoes on her feet, and her clothes are in rags. Peck my other eye out and take it to her. Then her father will not beat her." "I will stay with you for one more night," said the swallow, "but I cannot peck out your eye. You would be quite blind if I did." "Swallow, swallow, little swallow," said the prince, "do as I command you." Then the swallow pecked out the prince's other eye and flew off with it. When he came to the little match girl, he dropped the sapphire into her hand. "What a lovely bit of glass!" cried the little girl and ran home laughing. The swallow flew back to the prince. "You are blind now," he said, "so I will stay with you always." "No," said the poor prince, "you must fly away to Egypt." "I will stay with you always," repeated the swallow, and he slept at the prince's feet. All the next day he sat on the prince's shoulder and told him tales of what he had seen in strange lands far away. "Dear little swallow," said the prince, "you tell me about strange things, but I think that the strangest thing of all is the suffering of men and women and poor little children. fly over my city, little swallow, and come back and tell me the story of what you have seen there." So the swallow flew over the city and saw the rich feasting in their fine houses, while beggars were starving at the gates. ये हमारी सोसाइटी में बहुत ही बड़ा डिवाइड है, जो इस स्वॉलो को भी स्ट्रेंज लग रहा था, और यही वो उस प्रिंस को बता रहा था. He flew into the dark and dirty lanes and saw the white faces of little children who were hungry and cold and miserable. Under a bridge, 2 little boys were lying in each other's arms to cry and keep themselves warm. "How cold we are and how hungry," they said. The swallow flew back to the prince and told him what he had seen. "I am all covered with fine gold," said the prince. "I want you to peck it off, little by little, and take it to my poor people." Little by little, the swallow pecked off the fine gold till the prince looked dull and grey. He carried the gold to the poor, and the children's faces became rosier, and they laughed and played games in the street. "Now we have something to eat," they shouted to one another excitedly. Then the bitter cold winds brought snow and ice. The streets were so bright and shining that they looked as if they were made of silver. Icicles hung down from the roofs. Rich people went about in furs. अब इस बेचारी स्वॉलो का क्या हुआ? इजिप्ट तो गई नहीं. क्यों? क्योंकि प्रिंस अब खुद तो कुछ देख ही नहीं सकता था, और स्वॉलो भी क्योंकि एक काइंड हार्टेड बर्ड थी, वो प्रिंस के साथ लोगों की मदद करने के लिए रुकी रही. The poor little swallow grew colder and colder, but he would not leave the prince. He loved him too much to forsake him. He ate the breadcrumbs that he found outside the baker's door, and he tried to keep himself warm by beating his wings. At last he knew that he was going to die. He had just enough strength to fly up to the prince's shoulder. "Goodbye, dear prince," he said weakly. "I have to leave you now." "I am glad that you are going to Egypt," said the prince. "You have stayed here too long. I shall miss you, dear little swallow, because I love you." "I am not going to Egypt," said the little swallow. "I am going to the house of death." "Perhaps that is better. Death is the brother of sleep." Then he fell down dead at his feet. At that very moment, a strange noise sounded inside the statue, a crack, as if something had broken. It was the leaden heart of the prince, which had broken right in two. What a beautiful story, isn't it?